They call us void navigators, but I think of us as something else. Priests of an unseen faith, travelers on an uncharted sea where the rules of existence falter. We're the ones who slip between the cracks of space, threading the impossible, hauling cargo for corporations that care more about numbers than the minds they send into the abyss. They pay us well enough to keep us quiet, but not enough to make us forget what we see. And we do see things. I've been jumping through the black for 15 years. 15 years of solitude, of tracing routes along the edges of mapped space, ferrying shipments from one desolate outpost to another. I've heard the stories, the ones the suits call hallucinations, glitches, sensory overload. But those of us who've spent enough time out here know the truth. The void isn't empty. It watches. It waits. And sometimes, it speaks. My name is Silas Vayne, and this is the story of how I learned that some doors in the dark should never be opened. I was aboard the Erebus, my home, my prison, my ship. A long-range hauler, beaten up from years of jumps but still sturdy. The corporation liked to say the Erebus was outdated, but I trusted her more than any fresh-off-the-line vessel with AI too clean to know how to listen to the void. The contract was simple. A routine supply run to a deep space research station, Station K-129, located in a rarely traveled sector. It was a classified post, a quiet facility meant to monitor something the suits didn't want the rest of the galaxy to know about. The message was clear. Deliver the cargo, don't ask questions, don't linger. I checked the chronometer, 2,200 hours ship time. Another jump scheduled for 2,300. That gave me an hour to let the tension fester, to feel the weight of another blind leap into the unknown pressing against my ribs. I ran diagnostics on the Erebus. Systems nominal. Shields holding. Void drive ready. A dull routine, but familiarity kept my mind grounded. Then I noticed something. A small anomaly in my log. There was an unauthorized power fluctuation in the sensor array. A deviation in the readings. A flicker of data where there should have been nothing. A whisper of something unseen. I frowned, running a level 3 diagnostic. The system came back clean, no errors, no malfunctions. And yet, there it was. A time-stamped distortion in the Erebus's external scanners. 15 years in the void teaches you to trust your instincts. And my instincts told me that something had glanced at me from the darkness. I initiated the jump sequence, and the void wrapped around me like a funeral shroud. Jumping is never pleasant. The body isn't meant to experience the fracturing of space-time, no matter how many times you do it. There's a brief moment, a breath between existence, where everything feels wrong, like your mind is being stretched in too many directions, your thoughts unraveling and reforming. And then, as always, the moment passed, and the universe settled again. I checked the readings. I was still on course. Erebus was intact. The jump had been clean, but something felt off. There was a pressure in the cabin, a weight I couldn't define. The kind of silence that isn't just an absence of sound, but something deliberate, something listening. I turned to my primary viewport. That's when I saw it. A shape just at the edge of perception. A structure vast and motionless, hanging in the void where there should have been nothing. It was unlike any ship or station I'd ever seen. Angular, geometric, but wrong. My eyes struggled to hold onto its form, as if it shifted subtly the longer I looked at it. A lattice of interlocking planes, some of them bending in ways that made my mind ache. It was enormous, bigger than any vessel I'd ever encountered. A structure the size of a moon, hanging in the void without beacon lights, without motion, without a single transmission. And then, the strangest part, it wasn't there. At least, not according to my instruments. No mass reading, no energy output, no gravitational presence. The Erebus's sensors insisted there was nothing in front of me. But I could see it. And as I stared, I felt it staring back. That was when my comms panel flickered to life. A transmission. No source. No identifier. Just a single line of text appearing on my interface. Do you see it now? I exhaled slowly, my fingers gripping the edge of the console. The void had spoken, and I had no choice but to listen. The message on my screen pulsed, its glow casting ghostly shadows in the dim light of the cockpit. Do you see it now? A static hum filled the air, not from the speakers, but from somewhere deeper, almost beneath the skin. It wasn't just a question. It was an acknowledgement. Something knew I was here. I swallowed hard, my fingers hovering over the interface. There was no sender ID, no frequency tag. It had simply appeared, woven into the ship's communication system like it had always been there, waiting. I ran a scan again. Same results. There was nothing in front of me, except the massive, impossible structure my eyes refused to look away from. A cold sweat slicked my palms. I had a choice. Ignore it. Stick to protocol. Continue the mission. Respond. I should have chosen the first option. Instead, I did what any void navigator worth his salt would do. I reached for the keyboard and typed 3 words. Who are you? The reply came instantly. Open the door. I should have disengaged my comms. I should have initiated a reverse course, pulled the Erebus out of range, and left whatever this was behind. Instead, I stared at the message, my breath slow and measured. The Erebus shuddered. Not turbulence, not engine failure, something else. A sensation, as if my ship had become smaller, like the space around me was pressing inward. I reached for manual controls, running another sensor sweep, but the screen flickered before my hand could touch the console. And suddenly, I wasn't alone. The ship's warning klaxons didn't sound. There was no dramatic intrusion detected, no breach alarm, but something was inside. I felt it before I saw it. A shift in the air, a disturbance, as though reality had been nudged ever so slightly to the left. And then, from the corner of my vision, it stepped forward. Not a person, not a creature, a figure tall and thin with joints that bent wrong. It was humanoid but not human. Its form was wrapped in a dark material that shimmered like liquid void, swallowing the light. Its head was elongated, eyeless, featureless except for a faint, undulating pattern that pulsed like a heartbeat. And it was watching me. I turned my head to face it fully, and the moment my eyes locked onto its shifting form, I felt something click inside my mind, like a door swinging open. And for the first time in my life, I understood the void was not empty. It had never been empty. It had been waiting for me to listen. The figure didn't move, didn't breathe. It simply existed in a way that made my skin crawl, like a smudge on reality that didn't belong. Then, in a voice that wasn't a voice, it spoke. Not through sound, not through comms, directly into my thoughts. Do you remember, Silas? My body tensed, a cold shiver creeping up my spine. I didn't answer, couldn't answer, because the question didn't make sense. Remember what? The first time you saw us, the voice pressed. The first time you looked beyond the veil. My heartbeat slammed against my ribs. This wasn't possible. But something deep in my subconscious twisted, recoiling against a memory I didn't recognize. A memory that shouldn't exist. I hadn't seen this before. Had I? No, I would remember. Wouldn't I? The figure tilted its head slightly, a slow, inhuman movement, as if observing me with an interest colder than curiosity. And then it raised one long, unnatural hand. The lights in the cockpit flickered, dimmed, and the structure outside moved. Not physically, not in the way ships drift through space. It shifted, as though something vast and ancient had turned its attention toward me. I felt it see me, and I understood in that instant that I had already crossed a threshold I could never return from. I had answered the void's call, and now it would not let me go. The moment the structure outside shifted, the Erebus buckled. Not from impact, not from turbulence, from something else. Space itself twisted around me, bending at the edges, warping in ways my mind struggled to comprehend. The figure in my cockpit remained motionless, its featureless face pulsing faintly as if responding to some silent frequency. And then, in that same whispering, mind-penetrating voice, it spoke again. Step through. The ship's systems flickered wildly. My instruments screamed warnings. Gravitational anomalies, radiation spikes, spatial distortions, but none of it mattered. I wasn't in control anymore. The Erebus was being pulled forward. toward the monolithic structure that should not exist. I fought the controls, but my fingers felt sluggish, my limbs disconnected. It wasn't force dragging me toward the unknown. It was intention, and I realized with a deep, paralyzing horror that the void was welcoming me in. The exterior of the structure stretched impossibly, its shifting angles fracturing and reassembling like something too complex for human comprehension. And then, as the ship inched closer, I saw it, an opening, a perfect, black void in the surface of the impossible geometry, a doorway that hadn't been there a moment ago. I barely had time to react before the Erebus crossed the threshold, and the universe ended. There was no transition, no feeling of motion. One moment I was inside my ship, the next I wasn't. I was somewhere else, a place that defied all logic. The walls of reality had been stripped away, replaced with something vast and pulsing, shifting in and out of forms I couldn't recognize. I stood on a platform that wasn't solid, suspended in a void that wasn't empty. The figure from my cockpit was still with me, but now it wasn't alone. More of them emerged from the darkness. Tall, silent entities wrapped in liquid void, their forms glitching at the edges as if struggling to maintain shape in a world that didn't obey the rules of physics. And beyond them, something larger loomed. Presence. Something so immense that my mind instinctively recoiled from understanding it. Pulsating awareness. A force so ancient and aware that it made me feel like a child staring into the abyss of time itself. Then the whispers returned. "You were always meant to come back." The words slithered through my thoughts, wrapping around my consciousness like a vice. Come back? No, I had never been here before. Had I? Memories flickered at the edges of my mind. Fractured images. Glimpses of something I couldn't grasp. A feeling of familiarity. Like I had stood in this place before. Like I had left something behind. You are one of us. I tried to move, but my body no longer felt real. I looked down at my hands, and for the first time, I saw what they saw. I woke up inside the cockpit of the Erebus. Alarms were blaring. Systems were malfunctioning. My instruments were screaming errors. The impossible structure outside was gone. I was floating in open space, the blackness around me eerily normal again. Had I imagined it? Had any of it been real? Then I looked down at my arm and saw the dark veins still crawling beneath my skin. My fingers were changing. Dark veins of something other were spreading beneath my skin, twisting, reshaping. I wasn't just in this place. I was becoming part of it. The realization sent a wave of nausea through me. But deep inside, buried beneath my terror, another feeling stirred. A recognition. Somewhere in the depths of my mind, I understood. This was why I had always heard the whispers in the void. This was why I had seen the anomalies that others ignored. Because I had never truly been separate from this place. I had only forgotten. The figures surrounded me now, their silent forms waiting. For what? For me to decide. I could feel it, the pull, the invitation to surrender to whatever I was before. To shed the fragile human shell and embrace the truth. To step fully into the unknown. Or I could resist, fight, try to hold on to whatever was left of Silas Vayne. I clenched my fists, forcing my body to remain still against the pull. No, I whispered. I'm not ready. The presence stirred. The figures didn't move. And for a moment, the void itself seemed to hesitate. Then reality fractured. I don't know how long I've been sitting here. I haven't sent a distress call. Haven't moved the ship. Because I know something followed me back. I can feel it inside me. I don't know if I'm still human. And the worst part? I don't know if I want to be. End transmission.